You know, when you look out your window, you probably just assume you're seeing a direct live feed of reality.
Right, like it's just objectively there.
Yeah, exactly. A tree is a tree, a road is a road, you trust the glass. But what if there's actually an invisible control room standing between you and that view?
That is a terrifying thought, but yeah.
It is. And today we are taking a deep dive into a massive, frankly mind-bending stack of research that suggests the world you experience is, well, entirely engineered.
Engineered from the ground up.
Right. We're looking at notes deconstructing 10 different sources, spanning modern psychology, covert history, and artificial intelligence. And they are all synthesized into this one overarching meta-framework called the Reality Engine.
And I know it sounds like a heavy stack of material, but the mission today is actually incredibly practical for you listening.
Yeah.
We want to pull back the curtain on that control room.
We want to see the gears turning.
Exactly. We're uncovering the hidden information processing loop that actually constructs our modern reality. So we're going to map out this journey by exploring reality as a 3-layer stack.
Okay, lay it out for us.
First, we have the self, which acts as the interpreter. Second is the machine, which is the amplifier. And third, we have the system, which is the shaper of our collective world.
I love that structure. But real quick before we jump in, a quick disclaimer. The sources we're looking at today use some heavy political and economic frameworks, like Marxism, to analyze how information flows.
Which can be a very loaded term for people.
Oh, absolutely. So to be completely clear to you listening, we're not taking a political side here. We aren't endorsing these ideologies at all. We're just examining them impartially, like as analytical tools presented in the source text.
Right, we're just using the diagnostic tools the authors use to see how the engine works.
Perfect. So let's start right at layer 1, the inner world, the self. The research actually refers to this layer as the sieve.
The sieve, yeah.
Yeah, because before we can even begin to understand how, big tech or society shapes the world, we have to understand how we process raw data into meaning. And these sources just take an absolute sledgehammer to our traditional understanding of identity.
They really do. I mean, the synthesis tracks this historical shift. We used to have this healthy Enlightenment era individualism, right? Where you had an inherent stable self that you went out into the world to discover.
Right, like finding your true self.
Exactly. But it says we've shifted into this pathological self-obsession driven by social media and consumer psychology.
Yeah.
The core insight here is that the self is no longer discovered. It is constantly constructed.
Constantly constructed.
Yeah. You don't have an intrinsic, immovable core. Instead, you have this performative identity that is constantly being built and rebuilt based on validation loops.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there because that is a massive claim.
It's a lot to take in.
If myself is just a constant performance for external validation, how do the sources explain, deeply held moral convictions? Or what about introverts who actively avoid external validation?
That's a really good question.
Are they really arguing we have zero intrinsic core?
It's a crucial pushback. But the sources aren't saying you lack biological traits or a baseline personality. What they're arguing is that the narrative of who you are, the story you tell yourself and others, is a construct.
Oh, I see. So the framing is what's built.
Right. Even the introvert's rejection of society is a constructed identity in relation to the world. You are taking raw noise and filtering it. That is the mechanism of the sieve.
The filter itself.
Exactly. Raw reality hits you, and your identity acts as a filter that turns that noise into a named reality. You only experience the world after it passes through the mesh of your own biases, desires, and self-image.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. It's less like wearing tinted glasses you forgot about, and more like being a soundboard engineer at a live concert.
Oh, I like that.
Right, you've got all this raw audio coming in from the stage. That's reality. But your identity is sitting there at the mixing desk, aggressively muting certain frequencies.
Like ignoring compliments.
Yes. Your negativity bias is just pulling the fader down on anything good and boosting other frequencies like perceived threats. By the time the music actually hits the speakers, it sounds completely different from what was actually played.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. And the research applies this exact soundboard concept to our most fundamental emotions. I mean, there's an entire section breaking down the mechanics of love.
Oh, wow. How does that fit in?
Well, we culturally view love as this magical force you just passively receive from someone else, right? But the synthesis argues that feeling loved is actually a cognitive skill.
Wait, meaning you have to generate it yourself?
Exactly. You filter others' actions through your own emotional habits. If your internal soundboard is set to mute affection, maybe because of past trauma or insecurity, someone could be screaming that they love you and you literally wouldn't process the frequency.
That is so wild.
The absence of love in your life might not be an actual absence. It might just be a misperception.
Which honestly changes the stakes entirely. If we are responsible for mixing our own reality, then the questions we ask ourselves become incredibly important.
They do. They shape the filter.
But society aggressively rewards certainty. We want the definitive answer right now.
We do. But the sources point out that demanding a premature answer actually limits your exploration. We are trained to treat a question like a math problem to be solved and discarded.
Get the answer and move on.
Right. But the shift here is to treat a good question as a compass. It doesn't give you a destination. It gives you a direction for your identity formation. If you embrace the uncertainty, your sieve becomes much more adaptable.
But even with an adaptable sieve, we're still profoundly subjective. We're walking vulnerable soundboards.
Very vulnerable.
So what happens when you take that highly subjective, easily influenced inner world and you plug it into a massive automated stadium PA system?
Well, then you cross the threshold into layer 2 of the reality engine, the machine.
The amplifier.
And this is where exponential technology completely alters the human equation. We tend to view tools historically as things that just help us execute our existing tasks a bit faster.
Right. A hammer helps you hit a nail. A tractor helps you plow a field.
Exactly. But the sources argue that artificial intelligence is a fundamental step change. It expands human agency to the point where it redefines what action even means. AI is described here as an alien collaborator.
What does that actually look like in practice, though? Because alien collaborator sounds super sci-fi, but we're really just talking about software.
Let's break down the mechanics. AI doesn't just execute a command. It explores the latent space of your intention.
Latent space?
Yeah, it's a concept in machine learning that represents all the hidden possibilities between data points. Imagine you have a vague idea for a painting. You want, a futuristic city at dusk. If you use a traditional tool, like Photoshop, you still have to manually draw every single line. But with an alien collaborator, you input that vague intent, and the AI fills in the lighting, the physics, the architectural styles you hadn't even considered.
Oh, wow.
It explores this vast, hidden space of possibilities that you couldn't even articulate and generates a fully realized output.
So it's taking the raw intent from my subjective sieve and just fleshing it out completely. But, that requires a staggering amount of processing power.
It's staggering. And that brings us to the physical reality of the machine layer. All of these software dreams are entirely limited by hardware reality.
Yeah.
The chips, the data centers, the sheer energy grid.
The physical stuff.
Right. Intelligence itself is being industrialized. The sources point out a deep psychological driver behind this, too. Humanity's pursuit of infinite computation reflects our drive to transcend our biological limits.
We want to be limitless.
Exactly. But the danger is that we treat more compute as inherently better, without considering that this quest for infinite intelligence is rapidly outrunning human wisdom.
Because the capability of the machine is fundamentally alien to us. The research makes a really sharp distinction about how AI actually processes information, right?
It does. It points out that AI performs cognition without consciousness. It does not think like us at all. It uses vast mathematical pattern recognition across billions of parameters.
Not human reasoning or logic.
Exactly. But because its simulation of thought is virtually indistinguishable from actual human thought, it forces us to redefine intelligence. We are suddenly no longer the sole benchmark for cognition.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. If AI has no intrinsic meaning, if it doesn't